Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing HFY stories. Hit the bell icon to get notified about our latest uploads. The galaxy was a sprawling tapestry of civilizations, each with its own beauty and savagery, each with its stories of triumph and tragedy. Among them was the mysterious Ilfa, a diminutive alien woman of the Aranari species. She stood out not for her size, but for her peculiar nature, one that made her an outcast among her own people and invisible to others. Her radiant golden eyes carried wisdom far beyond her years, yet her fragile frame seemed an anomaly in a universe of war-hardened species. Ilfa sat quietly in the bustling galactic trade hub of Starlight Nexus. The sprawling station was a cacophony of languages, scents, and colors, a junction for beings from all across the Milky Way. Yet Ilfa was utterly alone. Her people valued physical strength and dominance, traits she lacked. The males of her species viewed her as weak and unworthy, while males of other alien species saw little more than a runt unfit for the harshness of galactic life. But Ilfa knew better. Beneath her delicate appearance lay a resilience few could fathom. She was here on a desperate mission. Her homeworld was under threat from a ruthless warlord, a tyrant who sought to enslave her people for their mineral-rich lands. The Galactic Council refused to intervene, deeming the Aranari unworthy of their protection. If no one helped, her people would be annihilated. She scanned the room of warriors and mercenaries, all larger and more imposing than her, each one a potential ally who could fight for her cause, for the right price. Yet every approach had ended in rejection or ridicule. Too weak to pay, one had sneered. You're already defeated, another spat. Until she met him. Commander Elias Vane was a human warrior of formidable reputation. His name was whispered across the galaxy, a human who had fought and won battles even against superior alien forces. A scar ran across his face, cutting through a steely blue eye that seemed to see through the bravado of every alien who dared challenge him. Ilfa hesitated as she approached him. He was seated alone at a corner table, nursing a drink. His rugged armor bore scorch marks, a testament to countless battles, and the heavy plasma rifle leaned against his chair spoke of someone who lived by his own rules. "Excuse me," she began, her voice soft yet firm. Elias looked up, his piercing gaze locking onto hers. "You're not the first to ask for help today," he said, his tone gruff but not unkind. "What makes you different?" Ilfa swallowed her fear. "Because no one else believes in me and I need someone who can see beyond appearances. My people are in danger, Commander. I need a warrior not for coin but for justice." His brow furrowed. "Justice doesn't pay the bills, lady?" "Then consider this," she said, leaning closer. "If my people fall, the warlord will control the largest source of nephrite crystals in this quadrant. He'll become unstoppable. Help me stop him and you'll save millions, not just my kind." Elias leaned back, studying her. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. But I don't fight losing battles." "It's not a losing battle," Ilfa said, her voice rising with desperation. "I have a plan. I just need someone who believes in something greater than themselves." For a long moment Elias said nothing. Then he gestured to the seat opposite him. "Sit. Let's hear this plan of yours." Ilfa sat opposite Elias, her small frame dwarfed by the heavy chair. She placed a holographic device on the table, the faint hum of its activation filling the air as a shimmering blue map appeared. The map depicted her home planet, a lush green sphere ringed with orbital defenses and dotted with industrial cities. "This is Aranar," Ilfa began, pointing to a cluster of red markers encroaching on the planet's surface. "These are the warlord's forces. They've already taken 3 major territories and disabled 2 of our orbital stations. We're losing ground fast." Elias studied the map, his fingers idly tapping against his drink. "Looks like a one-sided slaughter. What makes you think a small team, let alone just me, could turn this around?" She tapped a glowing marker on the map. "This, his command ship. It's the heart of his operation. The warlord Zardak Mal is paranoid. He rarely leaves it and it's heavily guarded. But I know its weaknesses." Elias raised an eyebrow. "You've got my attention. Go on." Ilfa's voice grew steadier as she explained. "The Aranari aren't known for physical strength, but we excel in engineering. Before my exile, I worked on the systems of his command ship when it was still docked for repairs. I designed the neural interface for its AI core." Elias leaned forward, his interest piqued. "You're saying you can shut it down?" "I can access the core and overload the ship's power systems," she said. "But I need someone to get me on board." "That's where you come in." Elias chuckled, a low, gravelly sound. "So, you're asking me to waltz into the most heavily guarded ship in this sector and babysit you while you hack the system?" Ilfa's golden eyes blazed. Not babysit, protect. I may be small but I'm not helpless. Elias smirked. Fair enough. But you're talking about an infiltration job, not a war. You sure you're ready for this? Ilfa hesitated. I don't have a choice. My people depend on me. Elias sat back, his expression unreadable. After a long pause he nodded. All right. I'll help you. But understand this, I don't do things halfway. If I'm in, I'm all in. That means we do this my way. Relief washed over Ilfa's face. Agreed. Thank you, Commander. The pair began their preparations in the lower decks of the station, where mercenaries like Elias kept their ships and supplies. His vessel, the Iron Hawk, was a testament to human ingenuity, a sleek, heavily armored craft outfitted with state-of-the-art weaponry and stealth capabilities. As they boarded, Ilfa couldn't help but marvel at the ship's design. It's impressive, she admitted. Elias smirked. Humans have a knack for building things that shouldn't work but somehow do. She'll get us where we need to go. Inside, the ship was a blend of functionality and chaos. Tools and weapon components were strewn across the main deck, and the scent of engine oil lingered in the air. Don't mind the mess, Elias said, tossing his jacket onto a chair. I'm better at fixing things than organizing them. Ilfa smiled faintly. It reminds me of home. Elias handed her a datapad. Here's the layout of Zardak's ship, based on what intel I've got. You'll want to cross-reference it with your knowledge of the systems. She nodded, her fingers flying across the screen as she studied the schematics. His primary weakness is overconfidence. He's fortified the exterior but neglected internal redundancies. If we can breach the outer hull undetected, we can move quickly to the AI core. And the guards? Elias asked. Automated drones mostly, Ilfa replied. But he employs mercenaries too, hulking brutes who rely on brute force over strategy. Elias chuckled. Sounds like my kind of party. 2 days later, the Iron Hawk emerged from hyperspace near Aranar. The planet loomed large in the viewport, its beauty marred by the presence of Zardak's fleet. Elias activated the ship's cloaking system, guiding them through the enemy patrols with practiced precision. All right, he said, glancing at Ilfa. We're approaching the command ship. Once we're on board, there's no turning back. Ilfa's jaw tightened. I'm ready. The Iron Hawk slipped past the ship's sensors, docking in a shadowy maintenance bay. The interior of Zardak's command ship was cold and sterile, its corridors illuminated by an eerie blue light. Elias led the way, his plasma rifle at the ready. Ilfa followed closely, her small stature allowing her to move silently. They encountered their first patrol, a trio of drones hovering down the corridor. Elias signaled for Ilfa to stay back before dispatching them with pinpoint accuracy. You're good at this, Ilfa whispered. Comes with the territory, he replied. Let's keep moving. They navigated deeper into the ship, avoiding patrols and bypassing security systems. Ilfa's knowledge of the ship's layout proved invaluable, allowing them to reach the AI core without incident. The core room was a cavernous space dominated by a towering central console, its surface covered in glowing circuits. This is it, Ilfa said, stepping forward. She placed her hand on the console, her fingers glowing faintly as she interfaced with the system. Elias kept watch, his weapon trained on the entrance. How long will this take? Not long, Ilfa replied, her voice tense. But once I start, they'll know we're here. As if on cue, alarms began to blare, and the room was bathed in red light. Looks like we've got company, Elias said, his grip tightening on his rifle. Ilfa's hands moved faster, her mind racing to stay ahead of the ship's defenses. Just a little longer. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor, followed by the unmistakable hum of plasma weapons. The air in the AI core chamber crackled with tension as the heavy footfalls of approaching guards grew louder. Ilfa worked feverishly, her hands moving over the glowing console in a blur. Elias positioned himself by the entrance, his plasma rifle humming to life. His grin was sharp, almost wolfish, the kind of expression that sent lesser beings running. Ilfa, I hope you're as fast as you claim because we're about to have some uninvited guests. Almost there. Ilfa replied, her voice tight with concentration. She could feel the AI system fighting her intrusion, its defenses adapting with every second. The door at the far end of the corridor hissed open, revealing a squad of Zardak's mercenaries. They were towering brutes, each one clad in black armor and wielding plasma cannons. Their leader, a scar-faced Drekker, snarled at the sight of Elias. A human? You're far from Earth, little man, the Drekker growled, his voice a guttural rumble. Elias raised his rifle, his smirk widening. Yeah, and you're far from a fair fight. The first volley of plasma fire erupted down the corridor, lighting it up in bursts of blue and red. Elias dove into action, his movements fluid and precise. He fired in controlled bursts, each shot finding its mark. One mercenary fell with a cry, his weapon clattering to the floor. Another staggered as Elias's shots tore through his armor, leaving him crumpled on the cold metal floor. "Ilfa status?" Elias called, ducking behind a console as a cannon blast sizzled past him. "I need more time." Ilfa shouted, her fingers flying over the interface. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she bypassed yet another layer of encryption. The AI was relentless, its countermeasures growing more aggressive with every keystroke. Elias leaned out from his cover, taking down another mercenary. But for every one he eliminated, it seemed two more appeared. The Drekker roared, charging forward with a massive blade that sparked with energy. Elias sidestepped the attack at the last second, slamming the butt of his rifle into the Drekker's head. The alien staggered but didn't fall, his blood-red eyes glowing with rage. "You're tougher than you look," Elias muttered, dodging another swing. "And you're weaker than I expected," the Drekker snarled, swinging again with bone-crushing force. Elias grinned, rolling under the blade and planting a grenade at the Drekker's feet. Catch! The explosion rocked the corridor, sending the Drekker flying into a heap. Elias didn't wait to see if the alien would get back up. "Ilfa, we're running out of time. Just a few more seconds." Ilfa cried, her voice strained. She was close, she could feel the AI's defenses crumbling. With one final push, she bypassed the last layer of encryption and accessed the core. "Got it," she shouted triumphantly. The entire ship shuddered as Ilfa initiated the overload sequence. Lights flickered, and the hum of the engines grew erratic. Elias fired a few more shots, driving the remaining mercenaries back. "Time to go, Ilfa." "I need to finish the sequence," she insisted, her hands still working. "If I don't, the system will stabilize and all of this will be for nothing." Elias cursed under his breath. "Fine, but make it fast." The door at the end of the corridor burst open again, and more mercenaries poured in. Elias gritted his teeth, switching to his sidearm as his rifle overheated. The mercenaries weren't just mindless brutes. They were organized, laying down suppressive fire as they advanced. Elias was forced to retreat, taking cover beside Ilfa. "This is bad," he muttered, firing blind over the console. Ilfa's voice was calm, almost serene. "Done?" The ship groaned, a eep, mechanical wail echoing through its hull. Sparks flew from the console as Ilfa stepped back, her work complete. Elias grabbed her arm. "Then let's move." They sprinted out of the core room, the walls vibrating as the overload began to destabilize the ship's systems. Alarms blared and smoke filled the air as conduits ruptured. Behind them, the mercenaries gave chase, their shouts drowned out by the chaos. "Which way to the ship?" Elias shouted as they rounded a corner. "This way." Ilfa pointed down a side corridor, her memory of the layout guiding them. They burst into the maintenance bay where the Iron Hawk awaited. Elias hit the remote activation on his wristband, and the ship's engines roared to life. "Get in," he barked, covering Ilfa as she scrambled up the boarding ramp. Elias fired a few parting shots before leaping on board and slamming the hatch shut. "Hold on," he yelled, racing to the cockpit. Ilfa strapped herself into the co-pilot's seat as Elias took the controls. The Iron Hawk lifted off, dodging debris as the command ship began to tear itself apart. As they shot out of the bay, the ship's central reactor exploded, a blinding flash of light consuming the vessel. The Iron Hawk streaked away, the shockwave buffeting it as Elias pushed the engines to their limit. When the turbulence finally subsided, Ilfa let out a shaky breath. "We did it." Elias glanced at her, his expression equal parts relief and admiration. "Yeah, we did." But as the wreckage of the command ship faded into the distance, Elias's face grew serious. "Zardak's not dead," he said. "And he's going to want revenge." The Iron Hawk glided silently through the darkness of space, its hull battered but intact. In the cockpit, Elias set the ship on autopilot and leaned back in his chair, exhaling sharply. Ilfa sat beside him, her face illuminated by the faint glow of the ship's dashboard. Though her body was weary, her eyes sparkled with determination. They had crippled Zardak's flagship, but she knew their victory was far from complete. "He'll regroup," Elias said, breaking the silence. "Guys like Zardak don't take a hit like that lying down. He'll be coming for you, and anyone who stands in his way." Ilfa nodded. "I know. But his fleet will be in disarray for now. This gives us time to rally support." Elias smirked wryly. "Support?" From where? Your people turned their backs on you and the Galactic Council couldn't care less. Her jaw tightened. Not all Aranari rejected me. There's a resistance faction on the southern continent, hidden but still fighting. If we can reach them, they'll join us. And after that? Elias pressed. Zardak has the numbers. A few scattered rebels won't be enough to stop him. Ilfa's gaze didn't waver. We don't need to match his numbers. We just need to outthink him. With the right plan, we can use his strength against him. Elias studied her for a moment, then nodded. All right. Where's this resistance hiding? Ilfa activated a star chart on the dashboard, zooming in on her homeworld. The Erythian jungle. It's dense, nearly impossible to navigate without guidance, but they've made it their stronghold. Zardak's forces haven't been able to root them out. Elias frowned. A jungle stronghold sounds nice and all, but getting there undetected is going to be a challenge. We just blew up his flagship. His fleet will be on high alert. Hours later, the Iron Hawk approached Aranar's atmosphere, its stealth systems engaged. Elias piloted the ship with practiced ease, weaving through the patrols orbiting the planet. Ilfa sat at the co-pilot station, her fingers dancing across the console. Deploying decoys now. Small, spherical drones shot out from the ship, scattering in different directions. Each one emitted a signature identical to the Iron Hawk, creating the illusion of multiple vessels entering the atmosphere. Clever, Elias admitted. It won't fool them for long, Ilfa replied. We need to move quickly. The Iron Hawk descended into the thick canopy of the Erythian jungle, its landing struts sinking into the soft earth. The air outside was humid and heavy with the scent of vegetation. Elias grabbed his rifle and a satchel of supplies. Let's find your resistance. Ilfa led the way, her small frame slipping easily through the dense undergrowth. The jungle was alive with the sounds of alien wildlife, chirping insects, distant roars, and the rustle of unseen creatures. Stay close, she whispered. The jungle is full of predators, and not all of them are animal. Elias raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? Before Ilfa could answer, a sudden rustling in the bushes made them both freeze. Elias swung his rifle around, ready to fire. Wait, Ilfa said softly, holding up a hand. From the shadows emerged a group of Aranari fighters, their weapons trained on the newcomers. They were lean and agile, their green skin blending seamlessly with the jungle. One of them, a tall female with a scar running down her cheek, stepped forward. Her eyes narrowed as she studied Ilfa. Ilfa, the woman said, her voice laced with disbelief. Ilfa stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. It's me, Saren. I've come to help. Saren's expression hardened. You shouldn't be here. Zardak's forces will hunt you down, and you'll lead them straight to us. I've already struck a blow against Zardak, Ilfa said firmly. His flagship is destroyed and his fleet is in chaos. This is our chance to fight back. Saren hesitated, her gaze flicking to Elias. And who's this? A friend, Ilfa replied. A warrior who believes in our cause. Elias smirked. Nice to meet you too. The resistance camp was a hidden network of treehouses and underground bunkers, connected by rope bridges and concealed by the dense foliage. The Aranari fighters moved with practiced precision, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Elias was impressed despite himself. Nice setup. Looks like you've been holding out better than I expected. It's not enough, Saren said bluntly. Zardak's forces outnumber us 100 to 1. We've been surviving, not winning. Inside the largest bunker, Ilfa addressed the gathered resistance leaders. She told them of Zardak's growing weakness and the opportunity to strike back. We can't wait for him to rebuild, she said passionately. If we attack now while his forces are disorganized, we can take back our home. The leaders murmured among themselves, doubt and hope warring on their faces. And how do you propose we do that? One of them asked. Ilfa glanced at Elias, who stepped forward. We hit him where it hurts, Elias said. His supply lines. Zardak's army relies on fuel and weapons shipments from his outposts. Cut those off, and he won't have the resources to maintain his occupation. Saren crossed her arms. That's easier said than done. His outposts are heavily guarded. Elias grinned. Good thing you've got me. The room fell silent as the Aranari leaders exchanged glances. Finally, Saren spoke. It's a risk, she said. But it might be our only chance. Ilfa nodded. We'll need everyone's help. Together we can end Zardak's reign. The leaders slowly nodded in agreement, their resolve hardening. The next phase of the plan would involve coordinated strikes on Zardak's supply depots and key outposts. But Elias knew the hardest battles were yet to come. As the resistance prepared for war, Ilfa and Elias stood on a high platform overlooking the camp. "You're not bad at this," Elias said, his tone light. "Not bad at what?" Ilfa asked, glancing at him. "Leading," he replied. "Your people are lucky to have you." Ilfa smiled faintly. "And I'm lucky to have you, Elias. I couldn't have done this alone." Elias looked out at the jungle, his expression thoughtful. "Just don't forget, Zardak's going to come at us harder than ever. We've got one shot at this." "We won't waste it," Ilfa said firmly. The Resistance's first target was a fuel depot nestled on the edge of the Zantari Basin, a vast expanse of shimmering black sands that shifted like water underfoot. The depot was heavily fortified, surrounded by automated turrets and patrolled by squads of Zardak's elite soldiers. Elias crouched behind a rocky outcropping, surveying the base through his binoculars. Beside him, Ilfa and Saren studied a holographic map of the depot's layout. "We can't take this place head-on," Saren said, her voice low. "They'll mow us down before we even reach the gates." "That's why we don't go through the gates," Elias replied. He pointed to the map. "This pipeline here, it runs from the depot to the fuel tanks buried under the sands. If we sabotage the pipeline, we can trigger a chain reaction that'll take out the entire facility." Ilfa frowned. "And what about the guards? They won't just let us waltz in and plant charges." "They won't see us coming," Elias said with a smirk. "We create a distraction. Something big enough to pull their attention away from the pipeline." Saren nodded. "We can stage a hit-and-run attack on the west perimeter. Draw their forces out while you and Ilfa handle the sabotage." Ilfa glanced at Elias, her expression serious. "Are you sure about this? If we get caught—" "We won't," Elias interrupted. "Trust me." As night fell, the resistance fighters moved into position. Saren led a team to the western edge of the depot, where they set up improvised rocket launchers and heavy blasters. Elias and Ilfa approached the pipeline from the south, using the shifting sands to mask their movements. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made every rustle of wind sound like a footstep. Saren's voice crackled over the comms. "We're in position. Ready when you are." "Go," Elias replied. Moments later, the night erupted in fire and sound. Explosions tore through the west perimeter, and blaster fire lit up the darkness. Alarms blared as the depot's guards scrambled to respond. "Move," Elias said, tugging Ilfa's arm. They slipped through the chaos, their footsteps muffled by the sands. The pipeline loomed ahead, a massive metal structure partially buried beneath the dunes. Elias pulled a satchel of charges from his pack and began placing them along the pipeline's supports. Ilfa kept watch, her keen eyes scanning for any sign of danger. "Hurry," she urged, her voice tense. "I'm going as fast as I can," Elias muttered, his hands working quickly. Just as he secured the final charge, Ilfa froze. "Elias, we've got company." He looked up to see a squad of guards approaching from the east. They hadn't spotted them yet, but it was only a matter of time. "Stay low," Elias whispered, pulling out his rifle. The guards drew closer, their voices faint over the roar of the depot's alarms. "Over here," one of them shouted, pointing in their direction. "So much for stealth," Elias muttered. He raised his rifle and fired, taking down the lead guard. The rest of the squad opened fire, their shots sizzling through the air. Ilfa ducked behind a support beam, returning fire with her compact blaster. "We need to detonate the charges now," she shouted. "Not yet," Elias replied, taking out another guard. "We need more distance or we'll get caught in the blast." The guards pressed forward, their numbers overwhelming. Elias and Ilfa retreated, firing as they went. "Elias, we're running out of time," Ilfa warned. He glanced at the charges, calculating the blast radius in his head. "All right, let's go." They broke into a sprint, the guards hot on their heels. Elias hit the detonator as they dove behind a dune. The explosion was deafening, a massive fireball erupting from the pipeline. The ground shook as the chain reaction spread to the depot's fuel tanks. One by one, the tanks detonated, sending columns of fire into the sky. The guards were thrown off their feet, their weapons clattering to the ground. Elias and Ilfa lay in the sand, catching their breath. "That," Elias said between gasps, "was way too close." Back at the resistance camp, the mood was jubilant. The destruction of the fuel depot had been a resounding success, and morale was higher than it had been in months. Saren clapped Elias on the back as he entered the command bunker. "Not bad, human. Not bad at all." Elias smirked. "Told you I was good." Ilfa stood at the center of the room, addressing the gathered fighters. "This is just the beginning. Zardak's forces rely on their supply lines, and we've just shown we can take them out. We'll keep hitting them one target at a time until they have nothing left." The fighters cheered, their voices echoing through the bunker. Elias leaned against the wall, watching Ilfa with a mixture of pride and admiration. She had grown into a leader, her confidence radiating with every word. As the meeting broke up, Ilfa approached him. "You did good out there," she said. "So did you," Elias replied. She hesitated, then added, "Thank you, Elias, for believing in me." He shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. "Someone has to." But as the celebrations continued, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that their fight was far from over. Zardak would retaliate, and when he did, he would bring everything he had. The victory at the fuel depot sent shockwaves across Aranar. Resistance cells that had once been isolated and disheartened now began to reach out, emboldened by the success of Ilfa's leadership. Messages arrived from hidden enclaves and underground shelters, pledging allegiance to the growing movement. Elias observed the bustling camp from a distance, leaning against the base of a tree. Fighters were sharpening weapons, repairing armor, and strategizing around hastily drawn maps. The energy was electric, but he couldn't shake the weight of what was coming next. "You're brooding again?" Ilfa's voice broke his thoughts. He turned to see her approach, her small frame carrying an undeniable presence. "Just thinking," he replied. "Zardak isn't the type to lick his wounds. He's going to hit back, and when he does, it's going to be bad." Ilfa nodded, her expression sober. "I know. That's why we need to stay ahead of him." She handed him a data pad. "Our next target?" Elias scanned the information. It detailed a communications relay station in the Ashen Highlands, a critical hub for Zardak's forces. If they could take it out, it would disrupt his ability to coordinate his troops. "Smart move," Elias said. "But this place is going to be a fortress. He'll have doubled the guard after what we pulled at the depot. Which is why we'll need to approach this differently," Ilfa replied. "We're not just going to destroy the relay. We're going to use it." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Use it how?" The Ashen Highlands were a barren, windswept expanse of jagged rocks and volcanic soil. The relay station stood atop the highest peak, its spindly towers bristling with antennae and dish arrays. Elias, Ilfa, and a small team of resistance fighters approached under the cover of night. They moved with practiced precision, their silhouettes blending into the rocky terrain. Saren's voice crackled over the comms. "We've got eyes on the target. Looks like 2 squads on patrol and automated turrets covering the main entrance." "We're not going in through the main entrance," Ilfa replied. "There's a maintenance hatch on the north side. It'll be less guarded, but we'll need to move fast." Elias smirked. "Fast is my specialty." They circled around to the north side, where a narrow path led to the maintenance hatch. The air was thin and cold, each step sending loose rocks tumbling down the slope. "Hold," Elias whispered, raising a hand. A patrol was approaching, their helmets glowing faintly in the dark. Elias motioned for the team to take cover behind a cluster of boulders. As the patrol passed, Ilfa signaled to the team. They moved swiftly and silently, reaching the hatch without incident. Elias examined the control panel. "Old tech. I can bypass this, but it'll take a minute." "Make it quick," Ilfa said, her eyes scanning the darkness. Elias worked deftly, his fingers flying over the panel. After a tense moment, the hatch hissed open. Inside the relay station, the team moved through dimly lit corridors. The air hummed with the sound of machinery, and the walls were lined with cables and conduits. They reached the control room without encountering resistance, a testament to Ilfa's planning. Saren's voice came over the comms. "We've got activity outside. Looks like they've noticed something's off. You need to move." "We're on it," Ilfa replied. Elias began setting up the explosives while Ilfa accessed the relay's control console. She typed rapidly, her face illuminated by the flickering screen. "Almost there," she said. Elias glanced at her. "You sure about this? Sending a message like this is going to paint a giant target on you?" "It's not about me," Ilfa said without looking up. "It's about the message." Elias nodded, his respect for her growing. "All right. Let's make it count." Ilfa finished typing and activated the broadcast. Her voice, steady and resolute, echoed through the station. "To the people of Aranar, and to everyone across the galaxy who has suffered under the rule of tyrants like Zardak, hear this: we are not defeated. We are not broken. We fight for our freedom and we will not stop until it is ours. Join us. Stand with us. Together we can end this oppression." The message transmitted across the relay's channels, reaching not only Zardak's forces but also civilian networks and other resistance movements. As the broadcast ended, alarms blared. "Time's up," Elias said. "We've got incoming." The first wave of guards stormed into the control room, their weapons blazing. Elias and the fighters returned fire, the confined space amplifying the noise of the battle. Ilfa ducked behind a console, firing at the guards with her blaster. Elias moved like a whirlwind, his rifle taking out enemies with ruthless efficiency. "We're getting pinned down?" Saren's voice crackled over the comms. "More reinforcements coming from the east. We need to move," Elias shouted. Ilfa activated a remote detonator, setting the charges throughout the station. "We've got 3 minutes to get out of here." The team fought their way back to the maintenance hatch, the walls shaking as the explosives began to detonate. Outside, the night sky was lit by flames as the relay station erupted in a series of explosions. Elias and Ilfa tumbled onto the rocky slope, gasping for breath. The rest of the team followed, their faces grim but victorious. "We did it," Ilfa said, her voice filled with both exhaustion and triumph. Elias nodded, looking up at the burning station. "Yeah. But this is just the start. Zardak's going to come at us harder now." Back at the camp, the resistance celebrated another victory. The broadcast had already sparked a wave of hope and defiance across the galaxy. Elias watched the celebration from the sidelines, a sense of unease gnawing at him. He knew Zardak wouldn't take this lightly. Ilfa approached him, her expression softening. "You did well, Elias. We couldn't have done this without you." "Don't thank me yet," Elias said. "The hard part's still ahead." She smiled faintly. "That's why we have to keep fighting. Together." The final reckoning. The camp was silent, the usual hum of activity replaced by a tense stillness. Elias sat sharpening his blade under the pale light of Aranar's twin moons, his thoughts heavy. He glanced at Ilfa across the fire. She was deep in discussion with Saren and a few senior resistance fighters, planning their boldest move yet. Zardak had made his move. The tyrant's retaliation was as brutal as Elias had predicted. Entire settlements were razed and resistance cells were hunted down with ruthless efficiency. The galaxy, however, was no longer watching in silence. Ilfa's broadcast had awakened something, a spark that had spread across star systems. Reinforcements were arriving, alien species who had suffered under Zardak's rule, smuggling supplies, weapons, and volunteers willing to fight. "Are we ready for this?" Elias asked when Ilfa finally joined him. She sat beside him, her expression unreadable. "We don't have a choice. Zardak's main fleet is gathering at the Kalar Rift. It's our only chance to cripple his forces. If we fail..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Failure meant the end of Aranar, of the resistance, and perhaps even of hope itself. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "We won't fail. Not while you're leading us." The Kalar Rift was a vast expanse of space, its swirling gas clouds illuminated by the distant light of dying stars. Zardak's fleet loomed in the distance, a massive armada bristling with firepower. The Resistance fleet, a ragtag collection of stolen ships and hastily armed freighters, emerged from hyperspace in tight formation. Despite their inferior numbers and firepower, the fighters exuded a determination that no calculation could measure. Elias stood on the bridge of their flagship, the Resolute, alongside Ilfa and Saren. The tension was palpable as they watched Zardak's fleet on the viewscreen. "Scanners are picking up heavy energy signatures," Saren reported. "They're charging their primary weapons?" Ilfa's voice was calm but firm. "All ships, hold position. Wait for my signal." The plan was audacious, borderline suicidal. They would lure Zardak's fleet into the rift, a treacherous region where gravity wells and electromagnetic storms would neutralize much of the enemy's technological advantage. "Here they come," Elias said, gripping the railing as Zardak's fleet began to advance. The first volley of fire lit up the void, massive energy blasts streaking toward the resistance ships. The Resolute shuddered as the shields absorbed the impact. "Return fire," Ilfa commanded. The resistance ships unleashed their weapons, a barrage of missiles and plasma bolts that struck the leading edge of Zardak's fleet. The enemy ships retaliated with devastating precision, but the resistance held their ground. "Evasive maneuvers," Ilfa ordered. "Lead them into the rift." Elias led a boarding party onto one of Zardak's dreadnoughts, their mission to disable its command systems. The corridors of the enemy ship were a maze of metal and shadow, the air thick with the smell of ozone. Ilfa was at his side, her blaster at the ready. "We need to reach the control room before they lock it down," she said. They moved quickly, taking out guards with precise shots. The resistance fighters behind them laid suppressive fire, holding off reinforcements. As they reached the control room, a massive figure stepped into their path. It was Zardak himself, his hulking frame clad in dark armor that seemed to absorb the light. "You dare challenge me in my domain?" Zardak's voice was a deep growl, laced with contempt. Elias stepped forward, his blade in hand. "Someone has to." Zardak laughed, a cold, menacing sound. "A human and a runt? You're an insult to the battlefield." Elias lunged, his blade clashing against Zardak's gauntlets. The tyrant was impossibly strong, each blow sending shockwaves through Elias's arms. Ilfa joined the fight, her agility and speed countering Zardak's brute force. She darted around him, firing shots that scorched his armor but didn't penetrate. "You're nothing but insects." Zardak roared, slamming his fist into the ground and sending Elias flying. Elias groaned, struggling to his feet. His ribs ached and his vision blurred, but he refused to back down. "Elias!" Ilfa shouted, throwing him her blade. Catching it midair, Elias charged again. This time, Ilfa distracted Zardak, drawing his attention while Elias aimed for a vulnerable spot in his armor. With a roar of determination, Elias drove the blade into the gap between Zardak's shoulder plates. The tyrant bellowed in pain, his movements faltering. Ilfa seized the opportunity, firing a precise shot that struck Zardak's exposed neck. The tyrant collapsed, his armor sparking as he hit the ground. With Zardak defeated, the resistance fighters quickly disabled the dreadnought's command systems. The ship's weapons fell silent, and its remaining crew surrendered. Back aboard the Resolute, Ilfa addressed the resistance fleet. "Zardak is dead and his fleet is in disarray. This is our chance to end this war. All ships advance." The resistance fleet surged forward, their renewed determination overwhelming the enemy. One by one, Zardak's ships were either destroyed or forced to retreat. As the last of the enemy ships fled into the void, cheers erupted across the resistance comm channels. Elias leaned against the bridge railing, exhausted but relieved. "We did it," he said, looking at Ilfa. She smiled, the weight of their victory finally sinking in. "No, Elias. You did it. You gave us hope when we needed it most." In the days that followed, the galaxy began to rebuild. News of Zardak's defeat spread quickly, inspiring uprisings on countless worlds. The resistance transformed into a coalition, dedicated to ensuring that no tyrant would rise again. Elias stood on a hill overlooking the ruins of the Kalar Rift, now a symbol of their victory. Ilfa joined him, her presence as steady as ever. "What's next for you?" she asked. He shrugged. "I've never been much for politics. But if you need someone to watch your back, I'm here." Ilfa smiled. "I wouldn't have it any other way. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.